everyone, it's Abby from Craft Industry Alliance, and we are here every single Wednesday for our member spotlight, which is a chance for us to drop in on one of our amazing Craft Industry Alliance members and learn more about their business. Maybe see some samples, get a little look at their studio, and just kind of learn about their journeys. So it's always very fun for me, and I'm very excited today to be welcoming Liz. Liz has a beautiful yarn business called Wull Studio. Liz, I see you are here and that you are requesting to join. So I'm just going to let you learn a little bit about Liz's business journey, including kind of a significant pivot that she made not too long ago and her emphasis on sustainability. Hey, Liz, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am good. Yeah, it's like a gray, cloudy day here in Boston, but I'm pretty good anyway. What about where are you located?
I'm in New Jersey. So, yeah, I'm basically in the middle of a cloud right
Yes,
now.
yeah, same here, exactly. But you've got all kinds of beautiful, bright yarn behind you. So I would
Yes.
love to hear about that. And tell us a little bit about your business, Wool Studio, as it is now, and then we'll kind of backtrack and talk about the pivot that you've made recently.
That sounds great. Yeah, so I'm kind of just getting into gear as Wool Studios, and the focus is really on sustainability in yarn crafting. So I am primarily focusing on organic merinos and other fibers that have a lesser or no environmental impact, but still sticking primarily with protein fibers. So I know that there are crafters that like to use organic cotton. I myself am really a wool lover, so sticking in that. But a lot of people don't know that you can get just as vibrant and beautiful hand-dyed colors without it needing to be superwash and without it needing to be sort of the same things that you're going to see at a million different indie dyers. So I'll just grab a
Yeah,
few.
please do.
But as you can see, you can definitely get color in, like, this is actually my favorite base, and this is an organic fine merino yarn. Um, and you can get really beautiful, fun, vibrant colors.
Yeah.
So noticing that there was sort of a lack of that, which is something that I was personally interested in, I decided to dive into that. And for over a decade, I've been using Greener Shades dyes, which are the only organic compliant acid dyes available. So it just seemed like a perfect marriage of interests and skills, and yeah.
Right. And most indie dyers, as you mentioned earlier, just for people who aren't that familiar with dyeing yarn, use superwash. And can you just explain a little bit about the difference between a superwash yarn and merino, or what you're using?
Absolutely. So superwashing is very popular with knitters and crocheters because it does mean that you can throw the item into a washing machine and into a dryer, and in
Right.
theory, that will be fine. Anyone who has ever actually done that to something they've made multiple times knows that it's still not ideal because it's still going to create a lot of pilling and fuzzing. And superwashing the fiber actually makes it more prone to pilling and fuzzing because what it does is either glue down the scales on a wool fiber or burn them off. And so essentially you're removing some of what's naturally there in the fiber so that it can't catch on itself and it can't felt, which is what makes your sweater shrink if you throw it in the wash and dryer, and you shouldn't do that. But it also gives the wool fiber some of its natural structure and texture. One of the reasons why I'm staying away from those fibers is because it's really harmful for the environment, that process. It also makes yarn that some people feel has a more kind of plasticky feel to it, which sometimes it does because it can be literally coated in plastic.
Mm.
Um, so getting away from that, it actually also makes yarns that are way better for things like lace and color work because they have their natural crimp, they have their natural sort of toothiness to it so
Yeah.
that the fibers can grab. And there can be a misconception that that makes for a scratchier yarn.
Mm-mm.
And I find it's actually the opposite because it maintains its natural structure and shape. Like, this is an extremely soft yarn. But it does mean that it's harder to dye. So dyers love superwash because it soaks the dye right up and you can't felt it. So if you leave your pot on for too long, no harm, no foul.
Right.
So I'm like a mother hen over my
Yeah.
dye pots, just babying them constantly so that we don't have that.
And somebody asked in the comments, and thank you for folks who are asking questions. And the account is called I So Love Quilting. Thank you for asking. Does wool that is not superwash shrink if it's not washed properly? I'm going to guess yes, would be my guess. But it sounds like even with superwash, you actually need to be pretty careful and maybe hand wash your garment anyway. But what do you think?
Yeah, with superwash, you're sort of guarding again, like that protects you from my loving family member did the laundry for me, and oh no, now my sweater is my small child sweater.
Okay.
And yes, with non-superwash wool, if you throw it in the washer and the dryer, you will have a much smaller, denser version of the thing you started off with. Which does mean that if you want to full or felt an item, you do need non-superwash.
Right.
But yeah, that is a downside of it. Or an upside again, depending on what you want to do. But yeah, if you are using non-superwash wool and you throw it in the wash and dryer and you didn't want to do that, you're not going to be happy.
Right. So
Uh,
maybe sew in a label that says handmade in big letters on the
yeah,
back and tells you what to do, just so that loving family member who was trying to be helpful doesn't accidentally, put it in the
miniaturize your garment. Yeah, I
exactly.
mean, the funny thing is, if you look at even superwash indie dye, superwash dyed by indie dyers, you'll often still see hand wash and dry because it still
Better.
does put your garment through a lot of wear and tear that you probably don't want. If you just spent like 100 hours knitting a
Right.
sweater, just don't do that to
Just don't
yourself.
do it. Exactly. Exactly. So, okay, that's great to hear. So, you were saying that this is fairly new, like new direction
Yes.
that you're going in. And so I wonder if there's a way to make these comments go down. No. Okay. They're just big, but that's okay. So I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about what you were doing before, because you were still dyeing yarn, but you were doing it a different way. And
Yes.
then something kind of happened and you felt like, oh, wait a minute, I can't do that anymore. And I'm going to need to make a change.
Yeah. And it's sort of, I was just thinking about this morning because it's the kind of story that I can tell you in a sentence or I can tell you in an hour. So we're going to go for the one sentence version.
Okay.
But yeah, so for 10 years, I ran apple tree nets. That was my first yarn business. I just sort of, as many dyers do, I kind of fell into it by chance. And I was dyeing almost entirely gradient yarns, continuous gradients. So I use my knitting machine and crank out these blanks and dye continuous gradients. And just a tremendous amount of fun. Loved what I did. And then a whole bunch of things sort of fell into place semi all at once over the course of about a year, um, where I was increasingly unhappy with the environmental repercussions of what I was doing because that involved mostly superwash yarns. And I didn't love that. And I didn't love that most of the bases that I was using were from sheep that weren't mules, but they weren't necessarily like the primary attention wasn't being paid to the environmental impact. And it also just takes a lot of physical labor to make that kind of yarn. And then I started having some health issues that made that very challenging. So I had sort of all of these things come together and I thought, none of this is sustainable. It's not sustainable for the planet. It's not sustainable for me. And that sort of the word sustainability sort of became the thing. And finally got to a point where I said, I have to close this. I can't, it's not sustainable. And about a week later, I said, well, that isn't, but sustainability is the thing. And I don't have to leave yarn forever because I love yarn. I live yarn. And that's where the idea for Wool Studios sort of came from. And so that was the pivot that everyone knew apple tree knits for a certain thing, so I didn't feel like I could continue doing that and ask everyone to just sort of totally switch the idea of what that brand was about. And that actually was a really beautiful way to have a fresh start
Yeah.
and bring something new forward without any associations. I mean, it's not like trying to hide who I was and like, no, none of that happened. But it lets this new business be its own thing and stand on its own legs. So it's been great, and people seem to really love what I'm doing here so far. So been encouraging to see that people are interested in having a more sustainable yarn out there.
Yeah, and I think it's inspiring to hear that you successfully started fresh because I do think it's something a lot of people dream about doing and going in a new direction. They've evolved over time and want to do something new. But there's a lot of fear too in abandoning something you've built for a long time that everybody knows you for, and having to start fresh and start over and build a new audience and things like that. So you're an example of someone who did it and is doing it. And I think for,
Hopefully.
yeah, just for that, it's really inspiring. And the name that you've chosen is an old term. It's WULL. And how did you find that name and what does it mean?
It's sort of, so wool is the old and Middle English word for wool. Like it's not that creative in that sense. It's just taking the old and bringing it into the new was sort of how I thought about it. I also like that it's apparently Scottish slang for will. And a lot of this has been brought forth through sheer willpower.
Yeah.
So I liked that connotation to it as well. But I really like the play on taking the classic wool as it comes off the sheet, minimally
Right.
processed, but then bringing it into the new with modern acid dyes that are so advanced that we can manufacture them without harming the environment, and modern methods that use minimal energy, don't waste a ton of water. So that was sort of where the play on the concept came in.
That's great. And so tell us how you're selling these yarns. Do you have an e-commerce site? Are you doing any wholesale? Are you doing any shows? Or how are you selling these products?
So since I really just launched last month, right now I do have my own website and I'm also selling on Etsy.
Okay.
And I am doing shows in the new year. So far, I'm signed up for Vogue in New York and the Indie Undyed Pavilion at the wholesale show that I'm blanking on.
At H&H.
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. I will see you there because I'll be there.
I am so excited. I did TNNA for several years as Apple Tree Knits, and I love doing all shows, but the industry shows are just another level of
It's a whole
fun.
different ball game and it's very fun. So you're going to be in the Indie Untangled Pavilion, which is one of our three newcomer pavilions. And you can get a small, just for people who don't know what that is, like you can
Yeah.
get a pretty small, but they're very centrally located and still very beautiful booth, for under $1,000 and get exposed to all of these cool retailers who are there. So it looked great last year. So I think that that's an awesome opportunity.
Yeah, I'm very excited. It's a really fantastic opportunity for anyone who's like me and, needs that sort of that hand up to get into that and get
Right.
exposure. It's really awesome. So since I'm just starting out, I'm looking to get into wholesaling again, which I
Right.
did as Apple Tree Knits and thoroughly enjoy doing. I'm a
Wonderful.
big believer in the importance of community in our industries. And, for yarn, like local yarn stores are where it all happens. They keep the industry moving forward. So,
100%. We love our retailers. We need our retailers. We want them to
yes.
not just survive, but to thrive. So,
Oh, I have lost the audio on my end.
Instagram,
Oh,
can you hear me okay?
yeah, now I can.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was getting a phone call, and sometimes that, like, the audio, Instagram's not the
I
best,
live
but
in the middle of the woods in a mountain, so sometimes my internet and phone also just cut out. So I was like, it might be me.
so weird. But anyway, it's been just great learning about your business, learning about your pivot, learning about your new direction, and I think very inspiring to hear. So thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for being a Craft Industry Alliance member too.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. This was a blast.
Wonderful. Thanks everybody who joined us, and we'll see you next week. Bye
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Bye
Bye-bye.
Liz.